Today, I'd like to kick this off by doing something we rarely get to do. You see, Wargaming employs a fellow named Richard Cutland, aka the Challenger. He's an ex-British tankie who served 30 years, both in peace and during war, and now he's a military specialist for Wargaming. And we figured, why not invite him on to talk about how tanks evolved from the beginning of Barbarossa to the Battle of Kursk, to discuss the types of tanks and the mechanized weaponry present there, to give us a picture of how the German and Soviet tanks fared against one another, and to discuss the effects of winter and weather on armored combat of the day. So, Richard Cutland, why don't you set the scene for us?
My pleasure. At the beginning of Operation Barbarossa, the Germans weren't expecting much from their opponents' tank forces, which were mostly composed of old T-26 and BTs. But little did they know the most advanced Soviet tank models, the brand new KV-1 and T-34, were actually superior to all German tanks. The German standard anti-tank weapons were found to be ineffective against these new Soviet vehicles. Still, these tanks were not available in great numbers. Their deployment was still incomplete when Barbarossa commenced. By 1941, the Red Army had deployed 1,000 T-34s and over 500 KV tanks, concentrated in only 5 of their 29 mechanized corps. Plus, the Soviet numerical advantage in heavy equipment was thoroughly offset by the superior training and organisation of the Wehrmacht. Soviet tank units were rarely well equipped. They lacked training and logistical support. Units were sent into combat with no arrangements in place for refuelling, ammunition, resupply, or personal replacement. Often, after a single engagement, units were destroyed or rendered ineffective. But on the German side, their few encounters with the powerful Soviet KV-1s and T-34s raised clear warning signs. They sent a special Panzer Commission to the Eastern Front on the 20th of November 1941 to study and learn from the superior Russian T-34s. The Germans now realised the advantage of sloped armour, which either deflected or reduced the impact of armoured-piercing shells. They introduced longer guns for the Panzer IV and added side skirts to protect the vehicles from anti-tank rifles. By the summer of 1943, right in time for the Battle of Kursk, the Wehrmacht was being equipped with the fruits of this research. The Tiger and Panther tanks were introduced, as was the new Ferdinand tank destroyer. Hitler focused heavily on these new designs, which he believed were the key to victory, and matched them with an increase in manpower. By the summer of 1943, 2/3 of the German army were based in Russia. That belief paid early dividends. When the Panther tank first appeared on the battlefields of the Eastern Front, the Soviets did not have an effective weapon to counter it. During the Battle of Kursk, it demonstrated that it could destroy any Soviet armoured fighting vehicle from long distance. As a result, it had a very high overall kill ratio, despite making up less than 7% of the estimated 2,400 to 2,700 total armoured fighting vehicles deployed by the Germans in this battle. But at the same time, it had been rushed to the field unready. Many units failed due to mechanical problems, and the Panther alone could not punch through the Soviets' layered defence system at Kursk. Even heavier tank designs like the Tiger were not a total win for Nazi Germany. While superior engineering-wise, they weren't easy to manufacture, which made them not suitable for wartime economics. You see, heavy tanks aren't that hard to make, you just add more of everything, but they're expensive, and they're hard to maintain, and they bog down, so they're only useful in certain situations. Indeed, the Soviets also had tanks comparable to the Tiger, the IS-2, plenty used, and they were also similar, big, deadly, and not really worth it. On the Soviet side, their research had focused on a new medium tank, called the T-43, but it had been commissioned back in 1942 to counter the Panzer IV, and it did not have enough firepower or armour protection to go up against Germany's new Panther. Many within the Soviet High Command believed the war effort would be better served by simply making more of the same T-34s that they had introduced at the start of the war. T-34s had the advantage of being faster and more nimble than the larger German tanks. The Soviets used them to their advantage by massing tanks and running them at full speed against German positions. The Germans could destroy a Soviet tank before the Soviet tank could get into range, about 2 kilometres versus 1 kilometre. So in the end, the tanks of both countries wound up being pretty comparable. No one nation had clearly superior tank technology. What the Soviet Union did have, however, was a clearly superior industrial force. They outproduced the Germans. So the biggest difference by far between Soviet and German tanks is that more of the former existed. Their home terrain also gave the Soviets an advantage. The Kursk region was famous for its black earth, which produced considerable dust when dry. These huge dust clouds would cut off the powerful German air support from the battlefield, and since the Soviet defenders were stationary, they were able to set up better observation points to scout and target their enemies. Even when it rained, huge thunderstorms turned the ground into a muddy quagmire that halted the German offensive where speed was essential. The home ground advantage combined with preparation time had clearly played in the favour of the defenders. Now I'll kick it back to Dan, but first I want to say a huge thank you to the Extra History team. It's been an absolute privilege to work with you and to be part of this animated journey through history. To all the viewers, I wish you well and hope you find this series both entertaining and informative. And a final comment from the Royal Tank Regiment's motto, Fear Naught.
Awesome, thank you very much. Okay, now that we're a little more familiar with the hardware involved, let's round this episode out with a little more of the run-up to what would so famously be known as the Battle of Kursk. Last we left off, German forces had been pushed back from Stalingrad. The Wehrmacht 6th Army had been surrounded and destroyed, and the Soviets had taken the offensive. But reeling from this defeat, Hitler finally gave full operational control to his general in charge of Army Group South, Erich von Manstein. Manstein decided to trade territory for time and accept retreat on a scale Hitler never would have the year before. His plan was to lure the Soviets forward until there was a time and place where he could pounce on an overextended Soviet line. He found that opportunity at Kharkov. As the Soviets pushed forward past the city, Manstein's reorganized and reinforced panzer divisions fell on their flanks. They rapidly encircled and cut off pockets of the Red Army. Soon the city of Kharkov was back in their hands. The Soviet losses were nothing like they were at the outset of the war, but losing 85,000 soldiers in a matter of weeks at the cost of a mere 10,000 German casualties seemed like it might signal the possibility of the initiative falling back into German hands. But 85,000 on a front of nearly 2 million men wasn't enough to change the flow of the war. The Soviets didn't lose their nerve or pull back after these losses. They were on a grim march forward to Berlin. Something else, something much more drastic would have to be done to put Germany back on the offensive. But as the battle lines evened out after the rapid German assault, everyone noticed one thing. There was a 100-mile-long and 160-mile-deep salient, or bulge, in the Russian lines around the town of Kursk. Cutting off this salient would strengthen the German position, deal a real blow to the Soviet army in the south, and if it could be done swiftly and decisively, return the initiative to the German forces. An attack on the Kursk salient was inevitable. It was just a matter of when. So join us next time for Operation Citadel, when the battle for Kursk begins.